But yes, I'm currently under 9 felony indictments in the state of Arizona.
For people that aren't familiar, Christina Bobb, you are working with the election integrity for the RNC. I remember in 2020, they said that there was not outcome determinate fraud.
Right.
That was the phrase they used, outcome determinate. I'm like, okay, you say outcome determinate fraud, then how much fraud was there?
A lot of the illegal aliens, as they're registering for vote, the intel that we're receiving is that they're registering. You have to have a residence, right? Like, what county do you live in? A lot of them are registering with the NGOs that brought them across the border in all 50 states. Those ballots don't even necessarily go to the illegal alien. They
get mailed to
the NGOs.
Congress are trying to push the SAVE Act to require people to be citizens.
Let's be very clear. It is already illegal to cast a ballot if you're not an American citizen. This is not getting cleaned up from Washington, D.C. It gets cleaned up from the people getting involved in the counties on the ground.
And a lot of people, especially when I say, oh, you got to go vote, and majority of people will say, like, why do I need to vote?
Yeah.
Because it's rigged anyway, or like they're going to steal it anyway. And
nothing's going to happen. My vote's not going to matter. That is 100% not true, and I can show you it's not true because the Democrats don't believe it's true. Because if the Democrats believed that they had a solid, handle on the election, they wouldn't have switched out Joe Biden. They would have just let Joe Biden win and then, switched it out after the election. But they know that that's a concern. They're trying to get as many illegal aliens registered to vote as possible because they know they don't have a handle on it. But what is so bizarre to me about that? I think these people are insane. I think whoever is behind the curtain pulling the strings on this stuff has like a wild and crazy imagination.
You have Trump, who is doing a lot of events.
So almost 2 years.
He's been going hard for a while.
Yeah.
And Kamala has been campaigning. Well, she hasn't started yet, but I'm assuming she'll start campaigning pretty soon. This may be my last episode.
What?
Welcome to the show. We are at the RNC in Washington, D.C. With the wonderful Christina Bobb. And this is crazy because I've never been in the Republican National Convention? Committee. Mm-hmm. Don't mess that up. I am in the RNC building, and it is a lot of security to get in. Yeah. It's pretty serious stuff.
It's a great building, right?
It's kind of cool. So for people that aren't familiar, Christina Bobb is the Marine Corps JAG. Yeah. Very accredited and very well known within that community.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you.
You are a journalist, and a journalist with OAN, which is when we met. Yep. In Iowa. And you are a lawyer, and you are a former Trump attorney. Yep. And now you are working with the election integrity for the RNC. Right. And you also wrote a book, Stealing Your Vote, The Inside Story of the 2020 Election and What It Means for 2024.
Yes, sir. That's right.
And kind of also indicted.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, there's lots of other things, too. But, yes, I'm currently under 9 felony indictments in the state of Arizona. So
is that...
I had the audacity to tell everybody that the election was stolen.
That's way too early in the interview to say that because
now
we're deleted. I don't know if we're ever going to make it to minute 4 of this interview and this conversation because apparently you still can't talk about that.
Yeah, people are funny, but I think it's becoming more accepted. I think, very few people look at Joe Biden and think that he was the most popular president in U.S. history. But there's been so much lawfare surrounding it. My life is a great example of that. And so many questions that I think people have tried to stay away from it and say, we're focused on 2024, which is great. We should be focused on 2024. And certainly we're less than 2 months away. So yes, 2024 is the focus.
But
it doesn't mean I don't have lingering effects from my time in 2020.
A little bit of resentment.
I'm getting over the resentment. But I still have to deal with it. So.
And I apologize. I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing because it's serious.
It's a very serious thing. I mean, what else can you do about it at this point?
It's like nervous laughter. I don't know how to handle it.
It's going to be fine. I'm not worried about it. They don't I don't think the Arizona Attorney General really has a case against me or any of the other defendants. I don't think any crime occurred, but we'll see how it goes.
Because there were, after 2020, and I remember in 2020, I was watching the news. And because I'm in Georgia, I'm watching what's going on in the Georgia election. Yeah. And Trump is winning, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, there's a water main leak. I'm like, okay, I guess that could happen.
Sure.
And then a couple hours later, like, oh, just kidding. There was a leaky toilet bowl. Yeah. And everyone comes back, and all of a sudden he's losing. I was like, that doesn't seem right.
It doesn't seem right,
does it? But you weren't allowed to ask.
You weren't allowed to ask. You were ridiculed and just demonized if you dared to say, hey, wait a second, why did we stop counting? Why did it take 4 additional days? Why couldn't we have a result on election night? Which is, all of it is pertinent to what we're about to face in less than 2 months, right? Is making sure that we don't have the same mistakes and same repeats, and they don't try to do the same thing in 2024 as they did in 2020. But yeah, I think anybody with half a brain could look at what happened in 2020 and go, that's not right. Like, that is not right. So yeah, one of my favorite narratives that they said was, there's no evidence of election fraud. Well, you just described evidence of election fraud. It might not be conclusive. It might be circumstantial, but from before we got the election result, we've had evidence of problems with the election. So it's never been an honest narrative. I think so.
A lot of the previous Trump indictments, which all of a sudden a lot of them just disappeared, and they dropped them, by the way. They said that there was not outcome determinate fraud.
Right.
That was the phrase they used, outcome determinate. I'm like, okay, you say outcome determinate fraud, then how much fraud was there? Because if you're going to say something is outcome determinate,
right,
then that means you know how much there was and how much there needed to have been to be outcome determinate.
Now, Matt, you're asking appropriate questions and you're coming up with reasonable conclusions, and you have to stop that. You can't think for yourself. You can't ask real questions, and you can't, actually try to search for the truth, because they don't like that.
But that's crazy, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, of course it's crazy. I mean, I wouldn't have thought we were going to be here where we are. Certainly where I am. Like, I wouldn't have thought they'd unleash hell to try to destroy my life. But okay, here we are. I mean, I haven't changed my position.
Keep doing what you do. I
love
it.
I think they thought that we would be easier to break. And so I'm proud of. I'm proud of where I'm at. Not that I'm proud to be under indictment, but I'm proud that I've stuck to my guns and I've maintained my integrity. And I think a lot of other people have. Not everybody has. We've seen it really is the great exposure on the conservative side, right? Of like, who's willing to say the hard things. And I think we can see who those people are.
Because some people are, after the indictments, are going, oh, just kidding. We're going to comply. We're going to work with them. Just kidding. Someone told us to, and they are flipping.
Yeah, really a lot of people have flipped, and I get it.
That's pressure from just
fear and just not wanting to deal with it. Like, I get it. Like, you're just like, God, I know I didn't do anything wrong, and I know I'm going to get out of this, and I know I'm not going to be found guilty of anything. I didn't do anything wrong, but the process is the punishment, right? And they want to punish you for really just standing your ground. I don't even want to say opposing them, because I wasn't even just for standing your ground and speaking out. They want to turn this nation into a one-party state. Of course, they'll keep both Democrats and Republicans because they want the illusion of two parties, but they want to have one-party control, and they haven't successfully been able to do that. They're trying, and we can see pieces of where they tried to do that, but thankfully they have not been successful at that yet. So they can try.
Let's get into a little bit of previous election stuff. So there were election cases brought up in Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada.
Right.
Those were the big ones. Nothing happened.
Right. Well, yeah, nothing happened in a timely fashion.
Correct.
For sure. Now we're seeing a lot of stuff, particularly in Georgia. Yes. Congratulations, your state's doing great. Where, 4 years later.
Good job, guys.
4 years later, it's coming out. So, but Georgia's done a really great job of revealing that there were significant problems in 2020. Regardless of how the election was conducted in a manner that was inconsistent with Georgia law, and we're seeing that play out now. So the key for Joe Biden's victory was to make sure that there was no avenue for Donald Trump to properly challenge what occurred in 2020 in a manner fast enough to actually get the election corrected. Because history is showing us, and will show us further in the future, that there were significant, I would say, outcome determinative problems.
Irregularities
with 2020. But we were never able to get through the court system fast enough in the amount of time needed to make that change. And so now they don't care. Now it's 4 years later. And so they're like, okay, all the information can come out. And we're seeing a lot of it come out now. So
do you think that they're letting the information come out now because what it does is creates distrust within the election system? And a lot of people, especially when I say, oh, you got to go vote. And majority of people will say, like, why do I need to vote?
Yeah.
Because it's rigged anyway, or like they're going to steal it anyway. And I get this a lot.
Yeah. Well, I have an answer for that. And that, to answer your question, that could be part of it. I think there's probably 1,000 different motivations by, everybody involved. Everyone's got their own perspective or their own purpose for doing things. But as far as why people should vote, and yes, it is very important to vote. It's important to get other people to vote, and it's important to actually be a part of the process, not just voting, but knock on doors. You can help with get out the vote if you like doing that stuff, or more importantly, the stuff that's more important to me is get involved in the actual election process. Work for your county. They've got seasonal workers. If they might not be hiring anymore because it's so close to the election, but maybe check your county or check your county GOP and get involved in the process. It's so important. But as far as why should we vote? It's so rigged. Nothing's going to happen. My vote's not going to matter. That is 100% not true, and I can show you it's not true because the Democrats don't believe it's true. Because if the Democrats believed that they had a solid handle on the election, they wouldn't have switched out Joe Biden. They would have just let Joe Biden win and then, switched it out after the election. But they know that that's a concern. They're trying to get as many illegal aliens registered to vote as possible because they know they don't have a handle on it. And so if they're freaking out doing all kinds of blatantly illegal activity for the purpose of trying to continue to manufacture the outcome of the election, then we need to take it as, okay, they know they don't have it done. Like they don't have it solid. There's certain areas that, of course, I would like to see cleaned up. But I personally do not believe a couple things. I don't believe that they have it 100% locked down, and I don't believe that they believe they have it 100% locked down. So to me, the least you can do is get out and vote.
So by them mobilizing, trying to get more votes, when we think that they already know what they're doing, the fact that they're mobilizing proves that the votes actually do matter.
They do. Yeah. They do. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting way to frame that. I can see that though.
Because with the the illegal, sorry, I'm kind of jumping around on issues. I apologize if I'm messing up your flow. But with the whole illegal alien voting issue thing, it's not, and I'm sure you probably already know this, the concern is not that the illegal aliens are actually going to go cast a ballot. They just need the registrations. Yeah. Because they want the ballots, they want the mail-in ballots, and a lot of the illegal aliens, as they're registering to vote, the intel that we're receiving is that they're registering. You have to have a residence, right? Like, what county do you live in? You have to have a house to register it, and a lot of them are registering with the NGOs that brought them across the border in all 50 states, and so those ballots don't even necessarily go to the illegal alien.
They're getting mailed to
the NGOs, right? So remember, if you remember from COVID, they had to go harvest all the ballots, collect them to cast them. A good chunk of them this cycle are just getting mailed straight to them.
And we started a lot of mail-in balloting because of COVID. They said, well, people can't go out. It's dangerous. It's bad for your health.
It's scary. Don't breathe the air.
Yeah, you can't breathe the air, so let's just mail ballots to everybody.
Yeah.
But if that was a reason to do it, then shouldn't there be a return of taking that away?
Going back to normal, right. So
well, they did say this is the new normal,
This is the new normal. Well, I do think that is a plus side to us. They don't have COVID this time. And so it didn't completely go back to the way that it was in, say, 2018 or 2016. But it's not the way it was in 2020 either. Because if you remember, a lot of the governors had to sign emergency orders that they didn't lawfully have the ability to do, but they kept, they kept updating the emergency orders to allow all these mail-in ballots to get mailed out, even though that's not legally the correct procedure for changing election procedure. They don't have that. There's no at least at the moment, there's no current emergency that they could really even pretend to issue that. So at least what is state law right now is supposed to be the way, the election is conducted. So that is better than it was in 2020. And I think that's why they've made such, I'm just guessing, I don't know on this, but I think that's probably why they've made such a push to register more illegals so that they have a greater buffer for mail-in ballots. I mean, I don't know. I can't pretend to be a psycho, but I assume that's what they're thinking.
I mean, right now through Congress, they're trying to push the SAVE Act to require people to be citizens. And I don't know if that'll make a difference. I don't know if they'll pass it anyway. I don't even know if I want them to pass it, to be honest.
Well, let's be very clear. It is already illegal to cast a ballot if you're not an American citizen.
Like
that's already illegal. So great. I think it's great that they've got the SAVE Act. I'm not knocking it in any way, but what I'm saying is if it's not passed, it doesn't mean it's legal for illegals to vote. It is not. It's never. It's not. And
it doesn't change the legality.
It doesn't change the legality of it. No. So yeah, I hope the SAVE Act does get passed. But in my mind, it's not. It doesn't prohibit us from preventing illegals from voting. Actually, and the RNC just had a great victory. Arizona has a law, recently passed a law in the book saying that any election worker has to discard or cannot count any voter registration that doesn't show proof of citizenship when they're registering to vote. Great new law that was recently passed. Democrats challenged it, said it was illegal, and it went up to the Supreme Court. We filed an emergency petition with the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court upheld it and said, for the purpose of the 2024 election, while the litigation continues, to get sorted out, the law is enforceable, meaning that in the state of Arizona, election workers are supposed to enforce it, that if the registration doesn't have proof of citizenship, they can't be registered. Whether the actors actually follow the law, is a different question, but it's still a great victory that I think the RNC and the others that were involved in it deserve credit for at least we have the law.
Great. Because I've seen there are certain loopholes built in. So you have to say that you're an American citizen, and if not, fill out this affidavit form. And you can sign that, and if you don't have it on you, then there's another form you can fill out so that you can say that, okay, I don't have it, and here's the reason why. I don't have proof. And then behind that, there's another affidavit that you can sign. So really, someone would have to go through 4 forms to confirm. Because you can almost say, I don't have it with me. I don't have my passport. I don't know where it is.
Right.
And there's all these things, and at the end, it's just, did someone sign it?
Right. And I mean, with summarizing that, the laws need to change, right? It is very difficult to clean up this issue, especially 2 months before the election. But I mean, the laws, particularly around voting and citizens being the ones that are the only legal voters, that all needs to get cleaned up.
Because I think some states start voting on Monday.
Yeah, I think it's the 20th.
Is it Monday or Tuesday?
Yeah,
it's very soon.
Yeah, it's real soon.
People start voting, early voting, and etc. As far as the previous election, then let's just close that one real quick. Which one do you think had the most legs and proof to say, okay, there was fraud? Mm-hmm. Which is the one that kind of sticks out? Because you didn't get in trouble in Georgia. You got in trouble only in Arizona.
Right, where I was on the ground reporting about the election fraud. Yeah. Weird, isn't it?
That's the only one they went after you.
Right. I know, kind of weird how that happened. But yeah, I spent months and months on the ground reporting on election fraud in Arizona, and it's weird. But
that's the only one.
That's the only place I got indicted. So it was certainly, I think there was evidence. I think there was evidence in all the states. To me, the biggest piece, and in my book, I mean, I covered 12 states. And so I spent months and months on the ground in Arizona, in Detroit, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, like just interviewing people, talking to elected officials, election workers, city clerks, volunteers, voters. I was talking to anybody and everybody that would give me a few minutes to say what they saw and what they experienced. And I think there was evidence everywhere. Like, at least I found it without putting too much effort into it. I was able to find it. And I think the biggest showing was the manner in which the election was conducted. Like, we talked about the emergency orders. Like, that all should have been deemed illegal. And then mailing out ballots in contradiction to different state laws. That was an illegal way of conducting the election. We saw in Wisconsin with the indefinitely confined voters. That wasn't a legal procedure. Actually, in Wisconsin, I don't know if you know this, wasn't widely reported. Shocker.
Shocking.
The sheriff of Racine County, Sheriff Schmaling, actually referred charges to the district attorney in Racine of 4 of the 5, or 5 of the 6, I don't remember, of the Wisconsin Election Commission because the instructions that they gave to the clerk was blatantly illegal, and he believed that it was election fraud, and so he referred charges for election fraud. And the Republican prosecutor actually refused to prosecute.
Really?
Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they just said we can't prosecute.
But why does that not get covered? Obvious question. But why does it not get covered? And what can people do in those types of situations? Because even if you're the sheriff, he thought he was doing the right thing.
I think he was doing the right thing. Yeah.
But it goes nowhere.
It goes nowhere.
It kind of discourages people from acting because at the end of the day, maybe you just get vilified. Maybe you'll get indicted.
Well, I think you might get indicted. Well, I think the key there is nobody knew, right? No, like it wasn't being covered. And so what we're seeing now, which I'm really pleased with, and I hope to see it continue, is local citizens getting involved. This all gets cleaned up from the local level. I'm honored and happy to be here at the RNC and to, have a national position. But let's make no mistake about it. This is not getting cleaned up from Washington, D.C. It gets cleaned up from the people getting involved in the counties on the ground, in Fulton County, and Gwinnett County, and DeKalb County. Where it's people. Sorry, I'm not trying to.
It's my fault.
Yeah. Well, no. You're doing your part. I think this podcast is part of it. But in Maricopa County, and it has to be cleaned up from the county level, and so that's why. The drum that I will beat until November 6th is if you are concerned about this election being free and fair, get involved. Contact your county, contact your local county party, and just make sure you participate in some way besides just voting, because it is saved at the local level. That's how this has to be saved.
I talked to a woman last year. And she was a volunteer for Fulton County, and she was going to get involved in the 2022 election, so after 2020. And she was an attendee at January 6th. Didn't go in the Capitol, was just there. And the morning of the election, they removed her, and they wouldn't let her work. They told her she can't be there, her and her son. And they told her she couldn't be there. And she said the night before they were doing a meeting around the 2020 election for all the poll workers and etc. And they were like chanting, like "We are change" and things like this.
Really?
And she's like, "Wait a second, something's not right here."
You mean this was before January 6th? You mean
no, after January 6th on 2022?
Oh, for 2022.
Yeah,
okay,
2022
I'm sorry.
election.
Okay.
Yeah, they wouldn't let her be a part of the election process.
Yeah.
Although she had been hired, she went through the formal training. She was at the 3-day lead up in order to get them prepared for it. And the morning of, they're like, you can't be here anymore. Yeah,
that's a problem that we're unfortunately seeing a lot. And the RNC just filed a suit in Detroit because, the state law says that you're supposed to hire an equal number from each party. And the RNC put forward, I want to say 690 something election workers. And they hired 50 of them. And they hired 2,300 Democrats.
What?
Yeah. I mean, it's that different. Now, they did hire other Republicans that were not recommended by the party, just like.
How many?
I want to say about 700.
Okay.
So it was,
It's only 3-1 imbalance.
So let me check my math, because I know the imbalance was 7-1.
Okay, then
in the lawsuit. So don't
quote me on that.
Don't quote me on the numbers, but I know the imbalance is 7-1. So
it's supposed to be 1-1.
Yeah, it's supposed to be 1-1. So that is actively ongoing. We saw that happen in Wisconsin. Obviously, it's happened in Georgia. We see it happening kind of all over the place. And so the RNC is fighting that, pushing back on trying to get parity, calling it parity, get parity for our workers. Equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's interesting. That's the one place they don't want diversity or equity or inclusion.
That's hilarious, by the way.
Yeah, that's funny. So the RNC is pushing back on that, but just to, freak you out, that is a legitimate problem.
Because a lot of people, I've been to kind of the RNC meetings and maybe some of the Trump 47 meetings within Georgia. And when I'm there, I'm like, this doesn't seem really positive. They skew much older.
Who skews older?
The people that workers.
Okay.
It's people that they're like, oh yeah, let's go knock on doors, etc. And I'm looking at them like they may knock on 2.
No, come on, you underestimate people.
And I'm like, what can we do to get maybe the more youthful, energetic people involved?
Well, to be honest, I think, and I support everybody going to Trump Force 47 and protectthevote.com, which is the RNC's website. But honestly, I think the younger voters tend to go to like Turning Point, which is a fantastic organization and has done a really good job of getting those people out to do things. So I think it's a group effort, right? The RNC is not going to win this. The Trump campaign is not going to win this by itself. It takes all of us working together to kind of achieve that common goal. And I think Turning Point does a great job with the younger voters, but not to say we don't. We're good too, but
Okay, so what is one thing that you would say the RNC is doing really well regarding the vote right now?
I think the litigation team is doing as well as we can. There's not very many cases that I think we can do differently or necessarily need to do differently. I think the litigation strategy pre-election is as tight as it's going to be. The outcomes obviously are not ours to control, because if we could control them, we certainly would. But I think we just had that win at the Supreme Court that said that Arizona can enforce the citizenship requirement. I think that's a great victory. The fact that they're putting pressure on Detroit and they've done it in Wisconsin to make sure that they're hiring people. I think the pre-election litigation has been as good as I could imagine it to be.
Then what is one thing that you think we need to ramp up on or work harder on, considering we have a month and a half to go?
The one thing I would like to see growth, and I do think the RNC is working on it, but I will not be satisfied until November 6th, or I should say January 20th, when Donald Trump is back in office, is volunteers, having people at the polls actually working the polls. I don't care if you're in Kansas or Oklahoma or Wisconsin, whatever state you're in by my own personal estimation, every state is a battleground state, because we don't know what they're going to do, right? We don't know what kind of tricks they're going to try to pull. We know that they're going to try, because we saw what they did in 2020. So just for my own peace of mind, I guess I would say I will not be happy with where we're at on our election integrity stuff until January 20th, when he's back in office. So volunteer, get involved, be a part of the team, be a part of your county, whatever it takes, but get involved.
We went through a crazy year of voter ID is racist. That was a wild year, by the way.
Right.
They said you can't require people to have ID because it's racist.
Black people can't figure out how to go to the DMV.
You can't go to the DMV. They're apparently not available. They're actually much harder to get to in rural America than in the inner cities, but apparently it's very difficult. That kind of, people don't really talk about that anymore.
No, they also, if you don't forget, they don't talk about Joe Biden being the most popular president in American history.
81 million votes.
Right. They don't talk. Do you remember on November 4th of 2020, there's no evidence of fraud, and Joe Biden is the most popular president in American history with 81 million votes. Do you remember they were beating that drum, and it was never believable. But I think people were just sucker punched and kind of rolled with it. But they're not beating that drum either. So there's a few things that they've changed.
How does that go away? Because they said Joe Biden is the most popular president in U.S. history. If that's true, then that doesn't change. Right. I mean, he can become less popular. But they don't want to say it anymore because nobody believes it. But he was still popular at the time.
They don't want to say it.
Why did they stop that?
Because they know nobody believes them. I mean, 30 days ago, Kamala Harris was a nobody. Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris. Is that actually right?
I think I've been corrected so many times to say I'm saying her name right. I'm saying her name wrong. I think it's Kamala.
Okay. Kamala Harris.
This is a serious podcast.
30 days ago, had never really received any delegate votes. She'd never been voted on really in any election. She hadn't in any national election. She had no popularity. She was tanking in the polls. Nobody liked her, and suddenly now she's their darling. So how do you go from Joe Biden being the most popular president in U.S. history to Kamala Harris being America's sweetheart?
I was with a friend last week, and we were in the car, and his 11-year-old daughter was in the car with us. And somehow we started talking about, and his wife was in the car. And somehow we were talking about Kamala, just kind of in passing. Nothing serious, Kamala. It was very, kind of a really surface level conversation. And she says, we're voting for Kamala, right? She's 11. And everyone kind of looked at her like, what? Why? And she's like, because something Brat Summer.
Oh.
She's 11.
Right.
And we're like, where'd you hear that? And she's like, you don't want Kamala to win? She's really good for women's rights. She's 11. And his wife, her mom, said, what women's right? What right?
She's arguing with an 11-year-old.
Yeah, 11-year-old.
Well, it's
what
curious.
Right does she not have, do women not have that she's fighting for?
Yeah.
And she says, oh, Mom, you don't care about women's rights? They are getting them at 11 years old. No idea where it's coming from.
I mean,
she's not watching top 10 reasons I love Kamala Harris videos.
She's probably not watching MSNBC.
It is just hidden in somewhere in the YouTube videos she's watching or in TikTok or somewhere in the messaging that you can't see it at the surface level. It's being instilled.
Man.
She's 11.
That's tough.
And everyone looked at each other like, oh my gosh.
I will give Democrats credit. I think they've been, I mean, possibly unethically, but better marketers probably for the last few decades.
They are phenomenal indoctrinators.
They're really good at it. Yeah. Yeah. So.
I mean, and the method in which they do that is very unethical. I mean, they're indoctrinating children.
So. Yeah.
But it's effective.
Yeah.
How do you
combat that? You still have to fight it, right?
Yeah. How do you combat that?
Well, thankfully, the 11-year-old can't vote. So.
Doesn't mean she won't.
No, right, right. So they've got 7 years to fix that as parents. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an all-out information war right now. I mean, you see it. You've done such a great job on your podcast, and I can't even imagine all of the stuff that you see with your podcast, that it is just an information war.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So thank you for doing it. I mean, it's shows like this that I think help combat that, right? Where people actually, and I do think podcasts are so important. I was in network news, and what podcasts are doing, especially for ones like this that are really popular and have good followings, but also the smaller ones, it decentralizes media. And so now people can find their sources of information in places other than the big three. Now in 2020, it wasn't really that way, at least not as much as it is now. Right now you've got the Tucker Carlsons that have made the switch over to podcast world. And so I think this birth of a podcast generation is actually really helpful to us because conservatives can get their voice out in a way that I think was harder when you really just had the main big three and then, the syndicated and stuff. But I think decentralizing media is helpful to us.
But sad note, this may be my last episode.
What?
Because you talk about election integrity, you talk about rigged elections, and I may not have a channel tomorrow. That's just the way it is. This may be the last one.
Well, I think I've been pretty good. I've learned how to dance the dance. But
if they take it all away, it doesn't matter to me. Because I think it's important. I think you should be able to have the conversations that are necessary.
Yeah.
And if they take it away, we'll just start a new one tomorrow.
Good
we
for
start
you.
all over
You'll
again.
Be fine.
What do you think is something that, as far as an election and integrity, what can normal people do to ensure election integrity? Because I get out there and help, but is there anything else people can do?
Well, being part of the process, I think, is the most important thing. Working for your county, getting involved at your county GOP or your state GOP, I think, is the most aggressive thing that you can do, which is what I would love everybody to go do. If you can't do that, just be eyes and ears. Keep your eyes and ears open. If it's overused, but if you see something, say something, or if you hear something weird, report it, because that's the only way things are going to get corrected. And that happened in 2020, but people were reporting them on election day. It just didn't have enough time to catch. So if you can, I don't know if it's law enforcement, if you see something illegal, obviously report it to law enforcement or to your local election office, depending on what it is that you witness. But if you can't actually be a part of the process, then I would say, report what you see and just kind of pay attention to what's going on.
You moved here from Florida.
Yes.
And you've been in D.C. 6 months?
Yeah, about.
Something like that?
Yeah.
Very different.
Yes, but I moved to Florida from D.C.
Okay.
So this was kind of like coming home.
Oh, coming back.
Yeah.
What do you think about D.C. and where it is now?
I love D.C. I know conservatives, everybody that I tell that
everyone
that's
just
what
did a collective sigh.
They're like, oh, I know all my friends go, you just like being around people who hate you. But no, I I don't know. I love DC, and I love this country, you know, and DC's so obviously important to this nation. So I love the city. You know, I think conservatives, people with conservative values, people with American values, we've given up a lot of territory, right? We've physically given up DC. I mean, it's like 99% liberal, but we've also given up like the industries, right? We've given up Hollywood in a lot of ways. We've given up corporations in a lot of ways. We've given up news media and pharmaceuticals, medicine. I think conservatives generally tend to mind their own business and are like, I don't want to be involved in government. I don't want to be involved. I want to run my business. I want to raise my family. I want to go to church. I want to, you know, we tend to be more inward focused, I think. And as a result, we've lost a lot of ground, both physically like DC, but as well as these other industries. So the lesson that I take is if we want to have a self-governed nation, we need to self-govern. And so most conservatives that I talk to are like, I hate government. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to do that. And I get it, but you have to.
It's really dirty business.
It's dirty business, but it doesn't have to be dirty. And the only reason it's dirty is because we've given it up, right? But we're starting to see the reverse happen, right? You look at so many school boards and how many parents have gotten up and stepped up and just said, hey, I don't want these books in our schools. And it's making a difference, or getting, you know, particular board members kicked off the board and replacing them. It's working and it matters. And so I think we're seeing that. We're seeing the cleansing process take place. I'd love to see it happen, you know, faster. And hopefully in 2 months we'll see a whole new cycle. But
so
we gotta
are
be
you
involved.
saying that DC is savable? Is there hope for this place?
I do, of course. I mean, you're probably asking the wrong person. I'm chronically optimistic. But I'm indicted on 9 felonies.
No big deal.
Fine.
No big deal.
So, no, I am. I'm chronically optimistic. But, yes, I think DC is savable. I think America is savable. But it comes down to the American people, right? The American people have to be the ones to save America. It's not going to be... The saving of America is not going to come from Washington, D.C., right? It's going to come from the rest of the country.
Do you think you have to save DC, or can you just, I mean, it's so far gone at this point that you forfeit it. And what do you think about this idea of moving the capital?
Moving the capital?
Yeah.
I haven't even seen that.
You've never heard people talk about this? People are saying that it should be in a more central location, that DC was originally picked because it's on the coast and near the water, but really a strategic location, somewhere in the middle is actually more...
I hadn't heard moving the entire capital. I've heard moving pieces of it, like... you know, moving one branch to Omaha and all that. And I love decentralization, right? I'm a true conservative. Like, get it, you know.
You're gonna move to Omaha?
No, which is great because you would have a bunch of conservatives that live in Omaha, you know, running whatever department ends up there. So, so I like the idea of decentralizing stuff. I think, I think DC will be saved, but I think the rest of the country gets saved first. I think DC is cleansed through the cleansing process of the rest of the country.
Because I'm in the RNC building, so I don't want to say that. No, do I want to say it? Okay, I'm going to say it.
Oh, no.
Because I've met a lot of congressmen in my life. And there's a couple out there that I like.
Okay.
Most I find extremely unimpressive. And that's really the word. Okay. Because they are making decisions on our behalf. And I meet them like, oh, I can't believe this guy's making a decision. I get that feeling all the time. And just kidding, I love you guys. But that's the feeling I get. Because I think that we need more qualified people that have had success in their life, maybe be a little selfless with their lives and say, all right, I'm going to actually do something that matters and care, that I care, rather than people that just want power to be in power. Yeah. I think that's really the problem that we have.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think it's interesting. And I'm not advocating one way or another. I'm just going to throw this out there and see what happens. But I think, you know, when they took members of Congress, and I don't know, 100 years ago or whatever, when they said members of Congress can no longer work, you can't earn outside income, it removed from them that connection to their local community, right? Like if you're a dentist in the community, you're going to feel things differently than if you used to be a dentist in the community, but you've been in DC for 20 years now, you know? And so I'm not advocating returning to that. I'm just throwing it out there that when we insulate them from the way the rest of the country works, are we surprised with the results that we get?
I mean, you talked about the idea of decentralization, which I love, and putting different agencies. What if Congress had to live in their states and they met?
Yeah, well, they would tell you that they do, right? They're there, right. But that's why I'm saying, like, actually, if we actually allowed them to earn more money in their states, maybe they'd actually spend more time there.
You can earn more money, maybe even pay more, but if you make any outside money, then you're going to jail.
Well, I'm not making the rules. I'm just saying.
That's a law I would put in.
Okay.
If you make any extra money outside of, like your salary and your own business, but if you're making too much lobbying money or...
they shouldn't be making any. They shouldn't be getting...
Or too much stock trading or whatever else.
I think that already is on the books, but... Right, so that's why...
It's like election integrity. It's in the same category of law.
Yeah, right. So I'm just saying, I would think that Democrats would actually support me on this one, but they might not just because it's me. I don't know. I think there's some... I don't have any consternation about allowing them to actually make money in their communities. I think that could actually be helpful. But
talking about Democrats.
And I'm just, like I said, I'm just spitballing. I'm not even advocating for it. It's just
not an official stance.
It's not an official stance. It's just me, like... How do we make Congress, relate to the community more? I don't know. That's one idea that I'm sure anybody on Twitter can shoot down, and that's fine.
Speaking of Democrats. Speaking of Democrats, what you've done and your work that you do and election integrity and all of this, something that they're not overly happy about. They actually don't like talking about this because, especially if you have different facts and figures and proof of existing and pre-existing fraud, annoying. They really don't like that. Yeah. That really pisses them off. Mm-hmm. What's your experience been like working with them, or do you have to work with them at all?
Democrats? Mm-hmm. Oh, no, they don't talk to me.
None?
No.
Because I feel like having a fair and safe election should be a bipartisan issue.
It should be bipartisan. But remember, I'm at the RNC, so I'm working with Republicans on Republican stuff. I can't imagine that Democrats would work with me, but my lane has not crossed into that.
None.
So I would love to have a conversation with any of them if they wanted to, but I imagine they're kind of sticking to their thing and we're sticking to our thing, and we'll see what happens.
What's your experience been like working at the RNC?
It's been a whirlwind for sure. I mean, I haven't been here that long. Came in kind of late in the game when President Trump, had his team kind of come in. But like I said, I'm really pleased with the litigation stuff. I think that's going really, really well. I'd love to see more people involved. And the number came out. I think it was 175,000 volunteers that the RNC has recruited. That's what I'm hearing. Is great, but I always go, okay, but how many people are going to show up? So I will never feel super comfortable or confident until Donald Trump is back in office. But
when you got the call that you had an opportunity to be at the RNC and work with the election integrity, did the RNC call you? Did President Trump you got to go?
Yeah, no, it was I actually got the call from Chris LaSavita, who's the chief of staff here, and also campaign manager, and just said, hey, we'd love to have you work at the RNC. And I was, of course, thrilled and honored, and all the good things that you want to do. So I personally wanted to be here in DC. Like I said, most of the campaign's down in Florida. I'm here in DC, kind of holding down the headquarters for it, I guess. Probably for a couple different reasons, also for personal reasons as well. But I was thrilled and grateful and honored to be asked. So, yeah.
Election. Because elections are so tricky because you have it coming up. That's all everyone's talking about, the election.
Right.
And Kamala apparently is really popular, and that's just wild to people. You have Trump, who is doing a lot of events, but kind of getting a little repetitive.
Yeah.
People are starting to feel that. My biggest fear is that people are going to hit Trump fatigue.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, especially because he never really got off the campaign trail, kind of.
Because he's been campaigning since essentially, he's been campaigning hard since about December.
I think maybe I would say longer than that.
Maybe about a year.
Yeah.
And Kamala...
Well, he announced, I think, in November of 22, right? So almost 2 years.
He's been going hard for a while.
Yeah.
And Kamala has been campaigning... Well, she hasn't started yet. But I'm assuming she'll start campaigning pretty soon.
I would not make that assumption. They're trying to avoid it. What happened, your assessment, you're in media, what happened with her and supposedly her and Tim Waltz's interview with CNN? Why did it only last 18 minutes and why didn't they air it live? What do you think happened there?
I think it was so bad that they had just cut it out.
I mean, that's the logical conclusion, right?
I mean, you would assume they recorded for at least an hour. You would think they would have.
I would, yeah.
And why is it even there?
I don't know.
Like, why can't she have her own interview? She only did one. She can't have more than one interview? She can't do it by herself?
I don't know. I mean, I think those are the logical assumptions to make, but it's like that can't be right.
Because I watched it, and I watched it live, and I was like, I can't believe it's over already.
Well, you didn't watch it live. They didn't air it live.
That's true. Why can't she do anything? And, I mean, I ask these questions, I think them, but really, you know the answer, is that they just don't want her out in public.
The answer is as obvious as, like, but that's what I keep going back to, is like, it can't be that. It really, like, that's so bad. It's so obvious, but I think it is.
But even 11-year-olds know that she's very demure.
Well,
that it's very Brat Summer to support her. It's a very Brat Summer thing, that she's for women's rights, you know? And it's really difficult because it's really the mass psychosis event all over again. Because you have maybe half the country going, oh yeah, no, we really like her. That's right. I almost forgot.
I'm shocked at the flip.
Yes.
Like, and how many people embraced
How
it.
quickly.
How quickly people embraced that. Everybody hated Kamala 33 days ago or whatever it was. And now they embrace magic.
I mean, my working theory is that if the mass psychosis event isn't as popular and as effective as they're hoping for, that the last final kind of move that they'll make is that maybe she becomes president before
I was just going to ask you that. Do you think
November?
they're going to do that?
I think that would make a lot of sense. If I were them and it was going the direction it is, that's what I would do. Yeah. Because you can say, okay, Joe went away.
Because then she's an incumbent.
Well, she's an incumbent. And if the country doesn't fall apart in 6 weeks before an election, like, well, actually, she did 6 weeks. Right. It worked out pretty good.
It was good.
Maybe they'll drop the interest rate for her, a quarter point. But like, oh, actually, she affected change. Maybe she'll even negotiate some sort of peace agreement in Israel and Gaza.
That's high hopes, I think.
Maybe they'll have a quick ceasefire. Something could happen where she's like, oh, wow, she saved it. And actually, she's very competent at what she does.
Yeah.
And look how great she's doing,
That it's
scary.
It's really scary to think that. But yeah, they could, I suppose.
I mean, you would think they're going to do whatever. If they're willing to cheat, they're willing to do literally anything.
They've been cheating in everything and anything and everything. Yeah.
And my premise is that there's always a little bit of election fraud.
Of course.
That it's kind of a known thing that everyone knows it.
Yeah, but we're talking about a whole different level. 2020 was like...
Different,
I think. I mean, I think you normally... And I had heard Rudy Giuliani said this to me once we were talking about it. He goes,
great, everybody... now we're going to cancel it again.
Oh, right. Can't talk about an American hero. Yeah. But he was like, in elections, you kind of figure that there's 1% to 2% cheating, one way or another. But anytime you go over 2%, you can see it. Well, I think they went over 2% in 2020.
But no one saw it.
Nobody saw it, right?
Apparently, you're not allowed to talk about it.
That's the media's tap dance, right? And that's why it's so important to decentralize media.
I mean, you came from media, or you were in media. Is mainstream media savable?
Yes, but I think it's going to look different. I don't think we're going to have only 3 channels or 6 if you include ABC and whatever the others, CBS. I think we're going to see the rise of shows like yours, like Tucker. These more independent platforms that can get 150 million views or how many ever. I mean, Tucker's show is like bonkers now. So I think I think mainstream media is going to look different than it has in the past.
Because a lot of people will say mainstream media is dead and no one gets their news from the mainstream.
A lot of people still do.
But all the podcasts, all the talking heads, what they do is they get their clip from the mainstream, and they do a reaction to it. So maybe CNN isn't getting the number directly,
right?
But they're getting the number indirectly.
Yeah,
actually, they're getting their message out there.
They are getting their message out there, and I haven't looked at the numbers recently to see like how many views each show is getting, you know. And I would assume, I don't know, but I would assume that mainstream media numbers are down because people are watching news elsewhere. But I don't think they're down to the point where the network's going to... I don't think so. I mean, it doesn't feel that way right now, but yeah, I think they're still going to be around. I think we just will see growth of other platforms.
And my biggest problem with independent media is that they become independent media because they say that the system is broken and that the mainstream media is dead and they're not good at what they do, or they're lying to you, they're propaganda, and then become independent media, and then they get donors and they get sponsors, and they become almost exactly
another version
of it.
Yeah, but at least it's smaller.
Oh,
right?
Does that matter?
It does, because then you have a bunch of different
decentralized corruption.
Well, but hopefully
corruption.
Not everybody's corrupt. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't have an immediate answer to it, but I think it's good to have the rise of these other shows. I think mainstream media will be just that. It'll still be around, but hopefully more transparent. And yeah, I don't know. I think the more independent journalists that we have that find things, I mean, it's the exposure that gives rise to independent journalists, right? Is they find a story, they get a cool piece of information, and they put it out there. And I feel like that's happening more and more with independent journalists than it is. And then the mainstream will pick up the stories that the more organic people are reporting.
I mean, the biggest thing in the news right now, especially regarding election, is that Russia is interfering with the election.
Oh, sorry. I spit, sorry.
That's everywhere now, especially with the news about Tenet Media and those guys and what happened. Everyone's like, oh, Russia. It's Russia all over again.
I don't doubt that our foreign adversaries are trying to meddle in our affairs the same way that we pretend we don't meddle in their affairs. We shouldn't be. Nobody should be doing that. But I don't doubt people are trying one way or another, to create some type of impact. Just the idea that Russia is the boogeyman for Trump is just, it's been used before. It's a little overused, I think.
It's only a problem apparently when Russia interferes.
Right.
But when other countries
China,
interfere,
it's fine. It's totally
no big deal.
Fine.
It's fine. That's the one.
Right. Yeah, that narrative is just so overused to the point where people are like, oh, great. Who cares?
But the other side uses it all the time, especially after this news. They're like, oh, look, told you, the conservative media, they're all Russian propagandists.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to fight that.
Well, that's why they do it, right? Is because you make an accusation and then try to force them to defend themselves. I mean, that's the same thing that's happening with all of us in criminal court, right? They make an accusation that has nothing to do with any basis in reality, but then they force you to go through the process of defending it. And they're hoping now at this point that we're too close to the election for it to actually, we can just say what we want you to believe and you'll just believe it. I don't think people are believing it the same way they were believing it in 2016 or 2020. Do you?
Well, I don't think the informed public believes it because they're into it. They understand politics. They follow politics. They've seen it before.
Right.
But it's that 1% of uninformed voters that actually decide an election.
Yeah.
And those people just see one or two headlines. They open up their news app once a week because they say, okay, I want to be at least somewhat informed. Or maybe they see it. Maybe they work in the hospital and they see CNN up there. Or they're in the airport and they see a headline. And that's the only knowledge that they have, and they base their decision on that. Like, how do you fight that? I mean, you can't fight that.
Nope. I mean, unless you can get to that uninformed voter. I mean, that is the game at this point, right?
Yeah. How do you get to them?
Who can get to the uninformed voters?
Well, I think that's why President Trump is going on a lot of these podcasts, these streams, local, like just trying to be everywhere at the same time. But the other side's got all of
the other side has the advantage on media because they've had mainstream media in their pocket for so long, and that's a big weapon to wield, right? Mainstream media. So But that's one of the things I love about our movement. It's very organic, very grassroots. Folks like your show pop up and you're like, oh, like there's awesome Americans that are fighting and they're willing to speak out and say great things. And, you know, I'm really proud of the grassroots efforts of the Trump, not just the Trump campaign, but just the Trump supporters, right? The MAGA crowd. The MAGA crowd's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's MAGA versus the machine.
Yeah.
Like I don't mean the voting machines. I mean the, whatever you want to call it, the system.
Do we ever go into a place where we don't rely on voting machines any longer? Because that's a big problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people are worried about it. I think that's something, I mean, that all needs to be determined at the local level, right? And so state legislators are the ones that determine how an election is, the time, place, and manner of the election. And so could a state then say, you know, we don't want to use machines, we want to go back to paper ballots? Yeah, they could. No, I don't, to my knowledge, no entire state has done that. I think there have been a couple counties that have done it. But yeah, I think it could go that way if the people in those areas decide that that's how they want to run their election.
It really comes down to local level. You have to get involved. You have to try to enact some sort of change because election laws do start at the local level.
Yep.
What is RNC doing? Is there a different tactic for federal versus local? Because again, local is where the change happens.
Right.
A lot of us working here on the federal level.
Yeah. So the RNC, I mean, we're a national organization, so we're trying to, you know, help out as many states, and then the state GOPs are the ones that go down to the county GOPs. So it's really up to like state GOPs to kind of manage what they're doing in their states, and the RNC supports as many states as we can in as many ways as we can. I mean, I think the local elections in so many ways are almost more important than, I mean, I can't say it's more important than the president, because obviously that is the most important race on the ballot right now. But so many times you look at county recorders, county clerks, local district attorneys. I mean, how many Republican district attorneys were there that refused to step up and prosecute blatant crimes? I think if conservatives in that area were paying attention and understood what was going on, they would make a change, right? So it's just really important that people get involved and understand who all the players are. Now, I live here in D.C., and so, of course, I had to do my research. Nobody likes my opinion in D.C., so I don't have a lot of hope for, like, making change this election cycle. But you just have to take the time to educate yourself on who are the leaders, the local leaders in your area. Do they stand for what you stand for? And you just have to take the time to figure it out.
Do you think in the upcoming election, do you think people end up voting down ballot? So they vote for President Trump and they vote Republican the whole way down? Or do you think that because there are a lot of people on the fence, they'll say, okay, fine, we'll vote for President Trump because our lives were better when he was president. But in order to kind of handicap his power and protect, because, you know, what if he becomes a dictator, we will vote opposite down ballot.
For this election cycle, I would anticipate that most people would vote, if they're going to vote Republican, vote Republican down the whole ballot, because the issues are so polarizing. Not everybody's going to do that, of course, and some may pick and choose. I think the races that are harder, that are also really equally important, are the races that don't necessarily have a party affiliated with them. They're the smaller ones. They're the, you know, superintendent of education or whatever. And it's going to be different in each state, because some states have positions that are not affiliated with a political party, and then that same position in another state might be affiliated with a political party. But I think those are the harder races, because you're like, who the heck is this person? I don't even know what this role is. You know what I mean? But yet you don't have to cast a ballot, but if you're already there, you got to figure it out. So make sure you do your research before you go vote. Make sure you know who all the people are all the way down the ballot, because it's key. It's really, really important.
But it's very difficult to find out information.
It can be really hard, yeah. So there are some great groups, though, that have like voter guides out.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've probably been mailed. You're in Georgia. You've got to have been mailed like 50 voter guides by now.
I am literally creating a box
You're
with
dumping
all of my mail, and I'm just throwing it in there.
So you should check it.
And at the end, I'm just going to open it all up and see what I get and see who spent more money is really my goal.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what it is. and it's so hard because you got to know who the person or who the group is that's putting the voter guide together, right? But there are some groups that put it together, or if you have a few extra minutes, you can go on Google.
It's not easy.
It's not as easy as it used to be, and things are very deceptive. But
because everyone wants to focus on the presidential election only, and because of that, all the news goes there, all the talking points go there, and everyone down ballot of that, you have no idea. You have no idea.
The good news is this is a general election. I think that was probably a little bit harder in primaries, especially when you're like, I have no idea which Republican is what or which Democrat is what. Like Democrats are easier because Democrats tend to have similar ideas and toe the party line. Republicans are a wild card, right? Like you're gonna get.
Yeah, do I like this Republican or do I not like this one? That's so difficult too.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard. And, thankfully the primaries are over, so that decision has already been made. So I personally think when it's a race that involves the party, that's why I assume everyone's going to do the same thing that I would do is vote straight party. But because it's just so polarizing. The parties are night and day different right now. And like our stances on the differences are so different.
After the election in November, what are you doing next?
I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I
going back to TV. What do you think? What do you want to do? Do you like this?
I want my country back. Yes. And so I got into this in media, kind of not realizing the rabbit hole I was going down.
Yes.
And I don't know what happens on the other side of the rabbit hole. All I know is I want my country back. And so I'm really focused on to January 20th. I want to see Donald Trump back in office. I want to see America saved. And then I want to go live my life. I don't know what it looks like. Haven't really even thought about it in years because I've been so focused on this. But yeah, I like media. I would go back into media. I don't know. We'll see.
Because that period between November 5th and January 20th, that's going to be a really odd time.
It's going to be a rough time. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I'm bracing myself for a dogfight no matter what happens, right? Because
the Democrats are like, it was stolen. Yeah, it was rigged. I'm like, are you kidding me?
It's just going to be like, it's just going to be. The reason why I'm bracing myself for a dogfight is because Chuck Schumer and I think Joe Biden have already come out and said, if Donald Trump wins, we're going to create civil war-like conditions. Okay, well, obviously I do not support war in any way. I don't think anybody should take up arms. I'm very much of this needs to be solved legally in an orderly process. We are, in theory, we're a constitutional republic. I have to be careful how I say that. And people are saying,
it's not a democracy. Yeah.
It's technically not it's not a democracy.
It's both.
It is both. It's a constitutional republic. The difference being in a democracy is pure majority wins. And we're not that, right? We're not pure majority winning. But anyway, we've got the electoral college and all these other ways that we protect the minority from the majority. In theory. In theory. So yeah, I don't know. I like media. I've enjoyed kind of being back in, putting my legal hat back on and doing legal work. But I don't know. I just want to see Donald Trump back in office.
Do you think it's going to be, everyone's waiting for the October surprise.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of what you think it may be?
October surprise. I have no idea. I think these people are insane. I think whoever is behind the curtain pulling the strings on this stuff has like a wild and crazy imagination. So no, I have no idea. I'm confident that whatever they throw at us, we'll deal with it. We'll handle it.
I can hear it. Who's they? Everyone says
I don't know.
Nobody knows.
I mean, that's the problem, right? Whoever the people are that determine what this next snowball is that is thrown, like rolled out in the nation to try to get everybody caught up. I don't know who's pulling the strings, and I don't really even have a theory about it. I see people go, "Oh, it's Barack Obama" or whatever. Like I don't know. I don't have any evidence to suggest.
But you live in D.C. Don't
I don't get invited
talk
to those
about
parties.
This? You don't get invited.
I'm not in those parties.
It's funny because I was walking here from just a couple blocks away, and walking through, I can hear people's conversations.
Yeah,
like
it's everywhere.
And you're like, oh, something. And they were talking about Russia.
Yeah, you hear it everywhere you're walking.
Literally everywhere you walk.
Especially around this building. Because we're a block from the Capitol, right? And we've got, like, this is the Republican building, right? So there's going to be a bunch of Republicans, whether they're members or whoever, in this area and next door. and then, basically everywhere else in the city is Democrat. But
have you been in the Democratic building?
I have not. I haven't been invited there either.
Is it far from here?
I don't even know. I'd have to check.
Is it nice? Is it nicer? I'm curious.
I don't know. We've got a pretty nice building.
I know. That's what I mean.
Nice. This is a nice studio, huh?
Like, how nice is that another building?
I bet it's nice.
You think I can get in?
If they don't make you show ID, if you don't tell them who you are.
I tried to go to this Kamala thing and they wouldn't let me in.
You probably have to have an appointment with somebody, I assume. I mean, that's how it is here. You'd have to have an appointment with someone.
It's true. I just want to see what the other side is what it looks like.
I think that's healthy. I think that's a good thing to do.
That's why I want to go to a Kamala event. They wouldn't let me in. I would love to go.
So that's really interesting to me. So you tried to register, because I've been media, right? And so I've registered to go to events as press.
Nothing.
And you get a press pass.
Nothing.
So you tried to register as press at a Kamala event, and they wouldn't let you in.
They wouldn't let me in as that. They wouldn't let me in as a regular attendee. They wouldn't let me in as an influencer.
So no media.
As a regular person.
That is bananas to me.
I was not allowed to go in as anything.
The Trump campaign does not do that.
They're amazing.
They let everybody, media who wants to get in, you can get in.
Even if you disagree, they're like, come on and see what's going on. It's such a stark difference between how they run things. President Trump, regardless of what you think about him, he is so open. It's like, all right, I have something going on.
So accessible.
Anyone can come in.
Yep.
And if you want to come stand in line and get into the event, like, you're more than welcome to. There is no sign up prior. There's no special guest list you have to be on. You don't have to call in any favors. If you want to attend as an American citizen or not an American citizen, really anyone can show up. On the other side, it's like,
that's crazy.
Where'd you get the referral
wouldn't
from?
Let you in as. But what is so bizarre to me about that is that, not that they've had a ton of events, but the events that they haven't really had good turnout, except for the concerts where people went to go see other people.
I tried to go to the concert. That's my fault.
Was that what it was?
Yes, I tried to go. I tried to go to the concert one. Well, that was the one that was in Atlanta.
Well, of course they're going to give that to other people because they're going to be able to fill that one. You got to try to go to. I get it. It was in Atlanta, but you got to try to go to one that doesn't have another draw.
They don't make it very easy to find out when an event is going to be.
That's true. I don't think they have many events.
It's like you just have to know, and they only disseminate the information through kind of their party and their donors and their specific network. So it's not public information.
That's so weird.
It took me, I had to click through, in order to find out when and where this Kamala event was, I had to dig through, I think, 4 hours of going to random Facebook groups to see if someone, by mistake, put out the location. Yeah. I couldn't find it. You can't just Google it and find it. No news.
That's really bizarre. I'm sure you've seen the stories where they're busing people in to her events. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
That's weird. Maybe if they just opened them, they wouldn't have to bus people in.
I mean, I just don't think they want regular people showing up because they want to.
They want to control.
They want full control of the narrative.
Yeah.
And they want to make sure that only people that agree with them show up, because God forbid someone go there and tell the truth.
Yeah, that's so weird.
I mean,
I guess that's political campaigning in
2024,
but normally the way I think of political campaigning is you want a bunch of people to show up to your events.
I mean, don't you want people that disagree with you to show up because possibly you can change someone's mind?
I suppose. I would want everybody to agree with me, but I wouldn't exclude
Believe
anybody.
me, agree with me because I said so.
Well, not because I said so, because I wouldn't think I'm right.
Yeah, I'm right.
Well, and I say that somewhat in jest, but of course anybody should be invited. And certainly welcome to attend. But if you're asking me, would I rather have a room full of people who agree with me or a room full of people who disagree with me? I'd rather have people agree with me.
Fair.
So, yeah, mean, call me lazy. But
if you could change one thing for the future of how elections are run and operated, but you get one change.
Only one change.
One change. What is the most important change that would change how elections are done?
So the first thing that came to my mind when you said that is transparency, which is a little bit of a cop-out because there's a lot of ways you need to make them more transparent. I think transparency is the most important in the sense of, okay, so I'm just making this up on the fly, but maybe having some way to confirm, and I think Georgia Board of Elections, good job, you guys just did this, confirming that the same number of votes counted is the same number of ballots counted.
How is that crazy?
Actually, no, it's not. I agree with it. And so I think if just having that transparent maybe that's it. Like a transparent, immediate audit to make sure that the numbers actually reconcile, and posting it publicly. You don't have to post ballots. You don't have to post addresses, voters, anything like that, but just the number of votes cast and the number of votes counted. And the number of votes counted are going to be a little bit different because some of them you're going to say, some of them are going to get thrown out for one reason or another, right? Because you voted twice or whatever it is. But just having that transparency of how votes were cast, I think. On the fly, that's my first thought.
And it doesn't seem, I can't believe states and secretaries of state don't do this already. It seems so obvious.
Well, they're doing it in Georgia now. Thank you.
Georgia, thank you. 1 out of 50.
Yeah. We're getting there one at a time. in 5,000 years, we'll have it done. No, I'm just kidding.
Do you think there is, I mean, obviously it's election. Do you think that there is anything that people should be overly concerned about? Or do you feel like, all right, guys, this time around, we got this?
Oh, I would never say that. Oh. Even if I thought it, I wouldn't say it, just because, like I said, January 20th, I want Donald Trump in office. Until then, I will always feel like we have work to do, right? I think, like I said, the litigation, I think RNC and other groups as well have probably litigated as much as reasonably can be done. So that's great. But if you remember from 2020, things didn't get bad until November 3rd, 2020, when, everything, it hit the fan and you had to see how people reacted. And so I'm kind of holding my breath for that. I think we're in probably, at least litigation-wise, as good of a place as we can be before the election. The RNC has recruited a lot of great, a lot of number, 175,000 people. So that is great, but I want to see those people show up. I want, you know what I mean? I always want to make sure that every dot is connected. So I think we've done a lot of great work. I'm proud of the work that the RNC has done, but I want to see, I'm not going to feel good about it until he's back in office.
How about a final word of encouragement for Americans out there watching and listening?
Yeah. Well, I'm encouraged how crazy the left is. That, honest to God, is like one of my, like, okay, they're so insane. They know we might have them. Okay. We might have them. So every time you see the left doing like crazy bonkers stuff, which is probably multiple times a day, just take that as okay, they're nervous. They're nervous, which we got them on the run. So I feel like we do have them on the run. I'm not, like I said, I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch, and I want to see a few more wickets hit, but I think we're in a good spot.
Go out and vote. Definitely go out and vote. It's not enough that you go out and vote. Take a friend, take 2 friends, take 3 friends.
Yep.
Go out and vote, because that's really all we have. Actually, if you don't vote, like, you can't complain anymore. That's really what it is. You have to vote. Yeah. Because, I mean, you can't sit there and be like, oh, no, like, the world is so screwed and they hate us. And if you want to complain, vote. It's like your official ticket to vote, to complain.
That's right. You cannot complain until you've cast a ballot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matt.